Ready?
Ready.
All right, let's rock.
I have no idea.
What is happening?
I don't know. I have a MacBook, so maybe it's like programmed in. If you do certain things with your hands, like something happens on the
That's
screen.
so wild.
So there you go. Yeah.
Great. That's a great way to start.
Yeah.
All right, we can start.
That's fine.
It's totally fine. It's authentic, right? That's
Yeah,
kind of the
yeah.
point. Well, hey, thanks for joining the Longbox Funk here on YouTube. This is a new video podcast designed to talk about comic books, the comic industry, with the people that are making the comics happen. And today I am stoked to have Carmen joining me to talk about his Kickstarter, his production company, right? It's a production company, Creative Industries, the
Yeah,
Harpoon Creative.
it's a publishing company. I'll talk about why I called it that.
Perfect.
When we get to it. Yeah.
Great. Okay, love it. I'm just excited. We have a lot to talk about and a lot that I want to pick your brain about. I read you were kind enough to shoot me the digital links for PROCTOR issues 1 and 2, and man, I know I said it in the email that I sent you, and I'm jumping way ahead here, but I'm stoked to talk to you about it because the characters that you've created just felt so freaking natural. Like it was as if you just reached into like any reader's life and said, this person right here, and you just put it into the comic, and they were pre-existing, and there was no like working through figuring out how they respond, how's she going to deal with it. It was just like, no, that's of course she's dealing it with that way. And so I want to talk to you about that as well, but instead of taking over everything, I'm going to let you tell me about yourself. So who are you, why are you, and how did you end up doing comics with a company and all the whole nine?
Yeah, so I am, for 15 years I have to say was now because I got a new position, but I was a high school English teacher, and I was always writing, so I've always been really passionate about writing fiction, and after years and years and years of writing books, I was just feeling kind of burnt out. The publishing industry right now for lit is was kind of rough for a couple of different reasons. And initially PROCTOR was a 300-page book that I had written.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so I had initially I was working on like this other smaller comic project just with friends. Like we all had equity in the book and we were just kind of kicking around ideas and working on it. And while that was happening, COVID happens and then I'm home all the time and I can't remember what initially got my wheels turning, but it was around Halloween, and the idea of Sam Hale was really born out of like the Vampire Slayer stuff. Buffy was on, and we're watching. My wife and I are watching all these movies, and I look at. I was looking at the landscape, and I just didn't see a hunter that was like anybody I knew. Every hunter, everybody in any of these movies, TV shows, or whatever, it's either like an origin story, which I'm just not interested in doing, or there are these like everybody's just really badass and everybody's really confident and they're really good at what they do. And I just felt like that was such a scam. Like I just felt like, I was to be honest with you, I was in the middle of teaching The Catcher in the Rye at the time.
Yeah.
So there was that like Holden narrative was very present for me. And I just really like the idea of just this idea of a demon hunter who was a bit of a mess. So I really didn't just sit down and start writing the script. I just started living with that idea in my head. And my brother and I like buy and sell comics. I'm always at cons setting up a vendor table. And over one summer, there's a comic book store like 2 blocks from my house, and the guys that work there are wonderful, and I've known them for over a decade. And I walk in one day and they're like, "Oh, do you need a summer job? Because we need somebody like part-time just to come in and do stuff." And they knew that like I've appraised collections before, like I'm pretty handy. So They hired me. We go into the winter, and I'm looking around the comic book store one night during a shift, and I'm just like, man, this could be a comic book. Like I was moving through a couple of different trade paperbacks at the time, just trying to like explore the medium in a way that I hadn't before because, they're expensive. So when you work at a comic book store, you realize like, oh, I can like really explore all of, because there's no rules to this thing. Anybody who
Right.
tells you there's rules to this thing is not telling the truth. Um, I started like researching scripts, and there were sample scripts, and you realize like everybody writes in a little different way. Even I watched the video of Scott Snyder,
Mm,
and he was talking about his writing for someone like Greg Capullo was different than his writing for someone like, I think you'd said Jim Lee or something, where like the
mm,
demands of your artist
yeah.
determine how you're writing, right? And what they want. Like some people want a ton of imagery, some people don't want a ton of imagery. Like it's really up to them.
Yeah.
So I found that fascinating. Christmas time comes, Top Cow has a talent search, and it was a Facebook group, and it was for writers and artists. I entered as a writer while this whole talent search is happening. Uh, all the artists are posting their work, and Ricardo Cecchi, who does all the inks and does the covers of does all the cover A's for me on
Yeah.
Proctor, posted some of his work, and I just commented underneath. I was like, if you don't win, this is a scam. Like there's no way you don't win this. Like this is crazy. He doesn't win, but through that, and I messaged him and then shot my, thought I would shoot my shot, and it was like,
Yeah.
listen, and it's nerd like, hey man, do you think you would like to read this thing? But I basically said, hey, listen, I I've got this idea for a comic. I will put the first 5 pages together, because for anybody who doesn't know, if you're going to pitch a comic, typically publishers only want the first 5 pages and a cover.
Hmm.
In the package, they want a synopsis and all that other stuff, but
Sure.
really, first 5 pages and a cover. So I was like, well, if I'm just going to pitch, if we're just going to only pitch that stuff anyway, I'll just pitch the first 5 pages to Ricardo and see what he thinks. Sent it to him. He loved it. He said he was in, and then that was it. And then we started really figuring out how to put everything together. Ricardo put me in touch with Marcos, who does the colors, and Reed, who does the lettering. So we kind of assembled our team, and then it took us about 4 or 5 months to get really the first 8 pages together,
Mm,
because Ricardo, who won Mad Cave's talent search at the time, the year before, was like talking to his editor. We were kind of getting ideas of like, what would be best. So we decided 8 pages. So we put the 8 pages together. We pitched it to 3 indies, only heard back from one. And the plan was to pitch every indie.
mm,
But, and this is going to sound self absorbed or conceited or whatever, but I think you probably come from the same school of thought that I come from, where you start looking around and you're like, why don't I just do this myself?
yep.
You know what I mean? And that's what, like, literally one of the reasons why I love, like, the minute I saw that you started this podcast, I reached out to you, because like, I don't know if I'm built with the DNA that you need to like play by all the rules all the time in that world.
Yeah.
And we had we finished with the 3 pitches, and I talked to Ricardo. I was like, dude, these are my characters, man. Like I want them to be real. Like
Yeah.
I don't want this thing to die on the vine. So I just told him, I was like, listen, I'll keep writing. I'll keep putting packages together, but like, I want you to keep working on it. Like I just paid him. Like I just bootstrapped the whole thing. You know, I
Yeah.
tell people all the time, like, I don't really have that much of a social life. You know what I mean? Like, I'm a full-time teacher. Well, now I'm a reading specialist, but for the most part, same world, right?
Sure.
Full-time teacher. I work 2 nights a week at the comic book store. I'm also a track and field coach right now. I work wait, I was working Comic Cons with my brother, like working for him because he's like the mastermind behind. There's a his company's called NJ Comic Stop. It's starting to grow and it's starting to become very successful. He just had a great con this past weekend that he threw. But I was working for him on Sundays. So I was working, like I think I told somebody at one point, like this was relatively recently, I worked like 19 days in a row
That's
of just
crazy.
like, yeah, of just like grind. And my logic was, I'm just going to pay the artists what they want. Like I'm going to find the right people. And as I was doing that, I was still shopping for publishers and I was on their social media pages and I was on their websites. And and I'm working at a comic book store. So I know the margins on everything. I know how
Mhm.
diamond distributors work. Like I know how not all the sausage is made, but I know how a lot of it's made, right? So I'm on the back end looking around and I'm like, if let's just say I get picked up by this publisher, well, they're going to want X% of the IP and I have a better looking website than they do.
Right.
I have more social media presence than they do. So what are they going to do? They're going to take my baby and they're going to sell it for me. And then I'm going to get crushed on the margins. And then I'm looking at the sales of those comics that they publish. And I'm like, well, they're already their books and those sales aren't doing that well. We can't sell those books in our stores. Nobody's buying these books because you know, it's on page whatever, 185 in the Diamond catalog. And,
Yeah.
the store owners are just flipping through. And most of the time they're like, oh, I guess I'll take that one. And because nobody in the comic book industry actually knows. I'm not going to say nobody because that's rude. I'll say this. I've come to learn that there are a large number of people who are in the comic book industry who aren't really interested in selling comics. They're interested in having comics for sale to purchase,
Mm.
but they aren't interested in the pitch. Like they aren't interested in actually selling. And when you look at some of these publishers who aren't really good at selling their books, and then they are put in stores where, to be frank, a lot of these store owners aren't really interested in selling the books.
Yep.
It just seems like it's a recipe for destruction. So by the time by the time we were at like July, August, I just was like, we're just gonna do this thing. So I started Harpoon Creative Industries. I founded the publishing company. I got the LLC. I did all the stuff. I did the dance, and now we're rocking and rolling. Like I'm already talking about with a couple people about doing a children's book come the winter if we can swing it.
Mm.
I've got another guy who approached me who has a really really cool like ghost punk haunted house uh comic that he sent me that I loved, that I might consider picking up and publishing. So now I'm kind of on that side of it
Yeah.
where it's weird. Like whenever I talk about it like this, I don't want to sound self-absorbed. Like I can do it all. Nobody knows what they're doing. I'll just do it all myself because that's not true. But
Right.
when you look at the landscape of the comic book industry right now, what is true is that there aren't many things that are working and
Mm.
not many people have things figured out. And it seems like a lot of publishers, a lot of comic book stores have a ton of questions and no answers for why people aren't buying books or why certain books are the prices that they're priced and how to get people in the store. And people are transitioning over to digital now, and how do you live in that world? So I think everybody is trying to figure it out. So my logic was like, well, if everybody's trying to figure it out, then I'll just be a part of that group
Yeah.
instead of like giving my IP to someone so that they can figure it out because they've had 15, 20 years now to figure it out.
Right.
You're
Right.
right. And that's the other thing. I'm like, if you haven't figured it out now, I don't have a ton of faith that you're going to figure it out, within the next 2 years.
Yeah.
So, yeah, there you go. I feel like it was a long-winded story, man. I
No,
apologize, but I get kind of wound up.
no, it's great because a lot of what you were saying strikes true with, like, even so I have my like go-to comic shop. I've been going there similarly for over a decade at this point. Um, and then there was a gap, and then I was there when I was in like, junior high with my dad. And so I've been going there and seeing the same shop set up with the same shelf with the same back issues and the same all the things for years. And I have learned that if I'm not proactive on finding new books to check out and like new creators to support and new, stories or whatever, it's not even necessarily for me like, oh, I'm a Marvel guy. Like, yeah, and also, like, I'm more so just a comic book guy. Like, to me, the company, like, okay, it doesn't matter because it feels like they're all doing the same thing. And that's, we have these books and we just got to put them out. And like, the formula and the business of putting stuff out and trying to find metrics. And I have no idea, like, how they determine price points. And I know initially, like, the price jumped because they were including the digital link, and then they just did away with those, but they kept the higher price. And then some books are like $8.99 and some are $9.99 and some are still $2.99. And it just
Yeah.
like, it feels so random that uh even though I don't have a book that I'm trying to get out, like, I have ideas, but I'm nowhere close to anything yet. But it feels very much like I would do the same thing of, you know what, like, I'm just going to do it because you're right. These companies have been around for 20, 30, 40.
Ooh, I lost you.
They might or might not have a recommendation for me. And if they do, like, did they do the research? Did the company surely didn't reach out to tell them, hey, we got a new book coming next month and you should tell people about it, right? Like, that doesn't happen,
No, I
doesn't it?
think. Well, I've been told that our manager every once in a while will pick up a book because, and I guess this is just a heads up to any like writer that's already connected to a publisher. Writers and artists should be actively like contacting comic book stores. It's very
Mm.
boots on the ground, but
Yeah,
we pick up books because the writer reached out. I asked him and my buddy Tim, who's the manager of the store, and I'll say, dude, what's this? And he'll just be like, I don't know. Author reached out, thought it looked cool, figured I'd pick up 2 issues, 2 or 3
that's
issues, and that's that. But I think uh, the real struggle is I think right now, like, comics have become IP farms,
mm,
and it's IP farming and it's marketing, period, right?
yep,
I had a conversation with a publisher at New York Comic Con who is, I don't know, I think at one point in time the publisher was top 10 in the country. So you would see their books on in most stores every once in a while, depending on how connected the store was to like a relative indie market, right? Um, and he was like, yeah, we take losses on all of our floppies. Like, we take a loss. And then you make the money on the trade paperback if you can, because the margin's better and it's already created. And then you hope you can get it optioned. And then that's kind of where you make more of the money on the back end. And then if you can just continue to get these things like, and I don't know, I have no idea how that world works, but
yeah,
if some movie studio gives you $100,000 so they have the rights to the movie for a year so that they can kind of play around with it, I mean, that's money found. You
yeah,
know what I mean? And now all of a sudden that can feed all of your other stuff. But, again, if you're taking losses on everything, then well, I'll take fine. Um, Especially because a lot of these publishers too, they're not really interested in, it seems like anyway, sales for them aren't true sales because
Mm,
my store I'm assuming my store, and I'm assuming most other comic book stores based on the dozen that exist in South Jersey, Philadelphia area,
sure.
nobody's scanning UPCs. So like
Yeah.
the sale is selling the comic to the store.
Yeah.
It's not selling the comic to the consumer. So it's almost this like bait and switch of we did 30,000 in sales. Well, you kind of did 30,000 in sales.
Yeah.
You sold 30,000 to comic book stores. We don't know if the comic book stores can move those books, and they don't know either because they're not keeping
Mm,
like there's no very few stores are keeping like an active inventory of how many books they're selling week to week, year to year, title to title.
yeah.
It's just all right. It goes on the new. It's like, how do you manage your inventory? It starts on the back wall, and then it goes to that wall, and then it goes to these bins, and then it goes into the basement into our dollar stock for our next dollar sale. And
Yep.
and that's kind of where it is. And that kind of addresses like the difficulty of to your, the price point, 2.99. Like really, we're in a world now where a comic book, if you just look at like minimum wage in New Jersey is like 14 and change. Like I think
Mm,
we're going to be 15 very soon. Um, if you look at like scale, like minimum wage in 2001 was like $5.75. And that was pretty much a comic I think was like half of that.
yeah.
Like $3, 2.99,
Yep.
right? So if you just at scale, we look at minimum wage today. Okay, well, what should a comic book be based on those probably 7.99 or probably 6.99. The problem is we don't know how to communicate value to consumers to make them believe that the story's worth 6.99.
Mm,
I watched an interview with Todd McFarlane. If you've never seen it, Complex Magazine used to have this series called Blueprint. A bunch of interviews with a bunch of famous people. They did a Blueprint interview with Todd McFarlane. He lays out like
mm,
his 10 steps for success, and he talks about when he wanted to sell his toys for $8.99 or something like that, or $7.99. And I'm sure I'm messing these numbers up a little bit, but like
sure.
whatever, 7.99. And they're like, Todd, you can't sell a toy for 7.99. Toys are 6.99. All toys, all action figures are 6.99. You can't sell a toy for 7.99. And he says in the interview, he's like, here's how you sell a toy for 7.99. You give the consumer $7.99 worth of value, period.
Mm,
And that was kind of eye-opening for me because I feel like in the comic book world, we've gotten kind of spoiled. For a really long time, we weren't really competing with any other entertainment sources. There was no Instagram, there was no TikTok. Video games, you couldn't play them with your friends really, the way that we can do it. Like the competition was so small that
yeah.
if you were the only store in a 30-minute radius, you didn't have to sell anything. Everything was just there was perceived value. Everything was there. And if you wanted something, you had to go to the comic book store and buy it, only show in town. Now you're competing with Netflix. You're competing with Apple Music. I'm bringing up Apple Music because I'm paying attention to the music industry too, right?
Hmm.
Like
Yeah.
we have to be, if you are creating comics, you would better be paying attention to the music industry, period. Because they are probably a couple years ahead of us in figuring it out. But these kids are figuring it out, man. Like not the labels. The labels aren't figuring it out. It's these 22-year-old kids are figuring it out.
Yeah.
They are creating value. There's a rapper out of the Bay Area named La Russell, who he's got like 1 million followers on Instagram. He has a Kickstarter campaign right now, and the campaign is just called Let Me Hold a Dollar. And it's just give him $1. and he's raised like $40,000
That's
just
insane.
just through donations. But all of his music, you can stream it for free. But if you want if you want like a record, or if you want like, I don't even know if he's doing CDs, but it's all pay what you want. And you offer him $5, and if he wants to sell it to you for $5, he'll sell it to you for $5. Same thing with his ticket prices to his shows. You submit what you want to pay to go to his show, and he will just accept or decline that offer.
Wow.
And he has these concerts in his back. He built like this pergola stage type thing in his backyard. He has these events where it's like a giant cookout, and again, it's pay what you want to get in. And you're looking at that and you're thinking like, man, he's on tour with T-Pain right now, or he just got on that tour. And it's just thinking about the market in a different way to make sure that you can give consumers $7.99 worth of value, right? So
Yeah.
my books, hard copy on Kickstarter is $15.99 for the comic, right? But you get the digital. I try to build value in. But even now, like if you want a copy of, well, both cover A and cover B of issue 1 were both $10 each. Now cover B is $15 because everybody really loves that cover. That's the Slay All Day red cover.
Yep.
So I don't want to sell all of them. So I'm like, I had to find a solution to like not just hemorrhage all, because we're almost, by the time the Kickstarter's over, we will be at almost 500 copies of issue 1 sold from like the trunk of my car. You know what
That's
I mean?
cool. Yeah.
Yeah. And like, so I'm at shows and I'm handing, people come up to me and they're like, how much is your comic book? And I have to justify a $10 spend, right? So that really transitions us to this conversation of the story had better be good. It had better be meaningful. It had better be thematically dense. The characters had better be real. The art had better be good. Like everything about it should be awesome. That's why, again, I work all the time so I can front all of it. I made the mistake of one of my artists that I work with was asking like, hey, if you don't mind, like, how much has this thing cost you so far? And I did my taxes at the end of the year. I know how certain parts of the project, what certain parts of the project cost.
Yeah.
But I just like did the hard math and was like, $26,300, man. And he was like, what? I was like, yeah, I don't know. $26,300 is what I'm into this project for. Now, that said, we are about $13,000 in sales so far. So I planned to be essentially one issue in the hole, like in the red for the entire thing, because then the issue will pay for the next issue, and then hopefully on the back end, you eventually play catch up, and then you break even, and then we're ready for a trade paperback or something along those lines. But yeah, like I need to, and my logic was like, if I'm going to ask someone to pay $10 for my comic, I need to show them that I have equity in the book. Like I need to show them this is not just like a cute thing for me. This is not for the same reason that, like, if you go to a hardcore show at a VFW, like you have to convince, like I love hardcore.
Yeah.
But like to convince someone who doesn't listen to it, that like they need to come to this, they need to drive 30 minutes to the middle of nowhere to a VFW Mutual Hall and watch a bunch of stuff that frankly they probably can't, like, it's just noise.
Yeah.
Right? There's a whole bunch of other cultural stuff that's there that you need to sell. And that's kind of why I'm so passionate about the music stuff too. And I've learned a lot from it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. And I do think like when you were talking about the music industry being a couple steps ahead of comics, I feel like it's not a unique idea that music and comics are so similar. because it's not just like a one trick pony. It's not like a, there's going to be like the flash in the pan stuff of, we have no idea why, but this random book has just exploded everywhere, and then in 3 months no one remembers it.
Yeah.
Like, it's the same thing with one hit wonders, and doing a retrospective, like, let's look back and figure out, like, what was the magic that was there, like, how did that work,
Yeah.
and then trying to figure out like how it worked and then replicate it, or just grab even like a piece of it and just like, I'm going to hold on to this magic and I'm going to continue to lean into this magic and use the magic card every time that I can, that it makes sense to. Because we had talked about before we started recording, um and I don't know if this is the right analogy, and I'm not intending this as a diss, it's going to sound like a diss, but if you're selling a ton of comics just because you have a naked lady on your cover, I almost feel like your story as like something substantial that I want to revisit just lost a bunch of credibility points for me, because I feel like a lot of the Kickstarters that I've seen that are doing those covers are only doing it to get numbers and to get like backer numbers and see that there's like revenue and streams increase and all of that. And I don't know that they're putting the same level of effort into crafting a story that's worth the 10.99, like someone who's not doing those things that are just like eye grabbing, attention grabbing things. That makes sense.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
I would love to, since we're already kind of talking about it, let's talk about Proctor and how you have crafted this story that, as I mentioned, and now I'm losing track of what I said when we were recording and what
Fine.
I said when we were. Um, but reading the first
The
issue,
balloons are
like,
back. Sorry.
balloons are back. It's true. It feels very. I love that. That's the thing. I hope it just keeps happening. um, I I feel like reading Proctor issue 1 and then just the more characters that you introduced in issue 2, I really do feel like I know that person. Like, I tried watching the show The Office, right? Before I worked in an office, and I hated the show. Like,
Yeah.
it was miserable. And then I worked in an office and I was like, "Oh, I know who Phyllis is.
Hmm.
I know who Kevin is." And so knowing who those people are in real life, then I could see myself in that story of like, oh no, yeah, I could totally work in that office. Yeah, I know all those people. And I
Yeah.
feel like your book, even though it's got she's a hunter and there are demons and there's all of this insanity that you have going on, you also have very real characters that have real issues that I feel like I could see myself in those pages right next to them. Like, here she goes again. Like, it's 9 a.m. and what number are you on?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
how did that happen? I guess is what that's a
Yeah.
loaded
So,
question.
um, you know, Sam is very much so. Okay, so Sam is very much so me in a lot of ways, but she's also me. Like, I one of the funny things about getting beta readers sometimes to read your stuff is they don't see themselves in the book that you wrote.
Mm.
And I remember at one point in time someone telling me that like they didn't know anybody like Sam. They thought that Sam was like super, like kind of like it seemed like I was like reaching. And I remember thinking like, man, I know everybody like Sam. Like, what do you mean?
Right.
And I think a lot of it is just being okay with telling your story. I think sometimes it's like I need to tell the story that other people are going to like.
Mm.
And I want to make all, and that was the trouble with the publishing industry when I was writing books. Like, you know, I understand that you have to meet the market where it is. I get that. But what I realized is like, well, I'll just take my ball and go play somewhere else. Like I just when I really wanted to write characters that were me, my friends, um, and that's where it really started. Like, okay, if I were a hunter, like if I were a hunter in at between the ages of 22 and when we meet Sam in the story, she's 27. Um, what were my 20s like? And the response is a nightmare, man. Like it
Oh,
was
mess.
a mess, an absolute mess. And I think about like what was my relationship with my mother like when I was 22? Terrible. Like we were at each other's throats all the time.
Yep,
Um and not now Sam's mom is definitely not my mom in some ways, but she is in others. And I don't want to spoil the story, so
sure.
eventually that'll we'll learn more about Sam and her relationship with her mom and her relationship with her dad and what I realized is like, oh, like I need to if I'm going to write this story about me and my friends, I need to find out like which part of our experiences are the most universal, right? And I really started there. Like,
Mm,
unfortunately, so I'm 39. I graduated from high school in 2003. I'm very much so a product of, you know, coming off the heels of Columbine and then leaning into 9/11 and then the opioid epidemic and all of us kind of just like hating high school and not seeing a point to much of anything. And then the housing crisis in 2008 and just there was this like feeling of, and this is personally to me. Other people I think had a grand old time.
mhm.
But I just felt like there were so many of us that were in this constant state of despair and like loss. Friends were dying. We'd been like I have been to way too many funerals, at my age. Like I've been to more funerals at 39 than probably people at like 69 because like all the funerals I've been to, not many of them have been for people older than me. You know what
Yeah,
I mean? Like it's not
yeah,
like they were at the end of their life.
yep.
And like I felt like generationally we were just missing a voice. Like we were missing a God, this sounds I can't believe I'm doing this. We were we were missing a Holden Caulfield type narrative. Like we were
Mm,
missing this like it's okay to think everything sucks in your 20s because it probably does. You know what I mean? Unless like
yeah,
somebody's really looking out for you and taking care of you, like your 20s are messy and it's okay for your 20s to be messy and if you're a millennial and you grew up in at least the Northeast and you were going to punk shows and you were hanging out at parties and you were straight edge, but then you weren't and all that other stuff, like you probably have friends that aren't here anymore. You know what I mean? And I really, really wanted to dig into that. Um, Sam's loss is right now couched in losing her dad at a young age. I felt like that was a more universal approach.
mm,
And then but still giving Sam her own demons, which we will kind of continue to explore as the story goes. Um and then like people have asked me like why did I make it a girl? Why did I make her a girl? And it was just like, well, I just really don't like Buffy. You know what I mean? Like there's that. Like I just
yeah,
because everybody thinks demon hunter and they go Buffy or now that and this is not a knock on something is killing the children. I love something is killing the children, but like that character is just too good at what she does. Like she's just too locked in.
yeah,
And I was reading a lot of stuff at the time where everybody was just really good at what they did out of like spite or hard work or whatever. Like they just know. And I just want to be like, that is so like that's actually not most people are shitheads. Like, you know, you know what I
yeah,
mean? Like,
yeah,
like most people, despite trying to get it right, still get it wrong.
yep,
But that's okay. And I really want to stress that. Like, it's okay to try really hard and get it wrong and fail. And, you know, again, not to spoil too much, but hopefully we see Sam learn as she goes. And that's why I created these other characters, right? Like, that's why you use these characters as tools to kind of, round out
yep.
the central protagonist. So that's why we get in issue 2 um Sophia, Bianchi, and Irish Tom, who Irish Tom is like has slowly become like my imaginary friend. Like I hope people fall in love with him as much as I have fallen in love with him.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. and they have their own story um, that will sort of explore issues 3 and 4 a little bit more. Yeah, so that's kind of where all that stuff came from.
Cool. That's great. So when you sat down, because I'm just like, I'm fascinated to learn people's writing approach. I've been listening to a biography of Stan Lee and hearing how he would write stuff and then give it to the artists and be like, yeah, this is where we're gonna go. And then the artist would do all the thing and then they'd give it back and be like, yeah, all right. Here's some dialogue. Like that to me is insane. And
Yeah,
I don't understand the even the idea of just like writing a script that an artist can take and then turn into something that when you get the pages back, you're like, holy crap, these like that's Sam. Like
yeah,
that's my girl. Like there she is.
yeah.
That seems like it would be insanely rewarding. So when you started Proctor, did you have the idea for like the whole story? Or was it more like, here's where I want to start and I want her to deal with some stuff and I want to have these challenges and then we'll eventually have this sort of resolution for the overarching thing? Like, is that how you did it, or were you like, I know in issue 1 I want it to be this kind of thing and I want to do this thing in 2 and this thing in 3? Like,
Well, because because the book was already written, I had to approach it from a little bit from a different place, right? Because I had to figure out how to move 300 pages into 6 issues,
yeah,
which was its own sort of chaos. So, um, even with writing the book, like a lot of it was me just playing in a sandbox with this character. Like it really, for me, um, started with a ton of voice. Like, what do I want this character to sound like and be? And then just playing around with all the things that would have had to have happened to her to make her behave the way that she does.
mm,
Um, and then after that, and realizing, I go, well, I don't have a story here, so I need a conflict, right? Like I was like, this doesn't great. Like I have my friend, but
yeah,
now I don't have. Like now we have to send her on her journey. So writing the book, I then really literally took a page out of just like Raiders of the Lost Ark, that Spielberg, Lucas storytelling,
mm,
and kind of was like, I can start there. Like, let's start there because I still wanted to make the movie fun. I mean, I still wanted to make the comic fun, and those are just fun. Like they just work, right? So
yeah,
I borrowed a lot of that sort of stuff, and then I had the book, and I remember initially wanting it to be 12 issues, but talking to my buddy at the comic book store and then talking to Ricardo and be like, well, all right, well, you can't write an all. If you're going to pitch a book to a publisher, because remember, at that point in time, we were going to pitch to get picked up.
yeah,
You can't pitch an ongoing series to an indie publisher. They won't pick it up, right? Because they want to write for the trade paperback.
yep,
Okay, so like you have to keep that again. You have to think about the framework of the storytelling, right? Like the financial framework of the storytelling.
yep, yep,
I have to write around profit margins. So how can I write around profit margins? So first I was like, oh, it's going to be an ongoing series. And then I was like, oh, it's going to be 12 issues. And then I was like, well, I don't have the money for a 12-issue story. So it's going to be 6, especially because a lot of the trade paperbacks I know are 6. A lot of indie publishers do like 6-issue minis all the time. So, all right, 6 issues. So then I moved back through, literally reread the book and just scooped out all of what I realized. Like I scooped out a lot of the backstory that really wasn't needed in your very much so Raiders of the Lost Ark, right? There's not a ton of Indiana Jones backstory, right?
yeah,
So like I really was like, okay, like if I'm doing an Indiana Jones book, what don't I need to still like really flesh this character out and make her likable and all this other stuff? And then I also realized like I needed to get rid of all the stuff that I was in love with, like that you write for you. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
and then you scoop all that out. Um, I think we had gotten it to 8 issues, and then I was talking with Ricardo, and then he was like, "We got to do 6." So I cut some things, and put the script together, and I write my scripts like a traditional movie script. At least that's what people have told me. Because again, like I looked at a ton of different scripts, and they're really like, yeah,
It's
I
all
guess you can
different.
take it. They're all different, man. All different. Like Alan, like if you try, like I remember, like I found like Alan Moore's Watchmen script. Like, oh, let me read this, and it was just like all capitals. It was just literally a wall of text. I downloaded it, read that first page, and just went delete, and,
Nope.
and then just went to the next one. Like I'll just go, and I think the Scott Snyder stuff helped me out the most. I was also shocked to see how little the writers of some books actually write. I read, man, and this is gonna sound like I'm talking trash on the art, like, and I don't want to. I'm just again, the books are good. I just am shocked at how the mechanisms work. I read Scotty Young's Middle West,
Yeah.
and he has in like the deluxe version, he has scripts in the back of it that you could sort of take a look at. And like his is pretty sparse. You know what I mean? Now I think he also drew that too, right? So you kind of
Yeah.
yeah, so like he can operate in a different world. I had the pleasure of buying Ben Percy is writing Wolverine right now.
Mhm.
I
Yep.
mean, which is if anybody's looking for like that is so talk about like selling books. Any Wolverine fan walks in the comic book store, I'm like, if you're not reading this, you're missing out. Like,
Yeah.
go ahead, do all the old stuff that you think you want to, but this is the funnest thing that you're going to read right now.
Yeah.
So when I was at New York Comic Con, just as a fan, Percy was genius. Made photocopies of his scripts for issue 1. So like for
Mm.
$5, you can just buy a hard copy of his script. So of course I did, and
Yeah.
he's definitely an author. Like definitely more prose. You know what I mean? A little bit more imagery, that sort of stuff. So you kind of just like figure out what works for you. Like I'm definitely more of a meat and potatoes Hemingway. Um, like my favorite book, one of my favorite books of all time is The Things They Carried, which is like a Vietnam War metafiction novel, but it's amazing. But it's very there's imagery when there needs to be imagery, and there is none if you don't need it, right?
Mm. Yeah.
Because I feel like for me, I just get bored. Like as an English teacher, like there is stuff where I'm just like, I just don't care, man. Like I just
Yeah.
can't. And some people love it. Like some people love the world building. But I feel like I want to play in the box too. And when you give me too much imagery, I don't get to live there as much.
Yep.
So yeah, that was kind of the process. I sent Ricardo the we don't do it much anymore because I just feel like our relationship now, he's just so good at what he does. And I think we have just developed a relationship to where we can play off of each other. Um, he doesn't really even ask for permission anymore. Like let's just say there's 5 panels on a page. Like he might bump a panel to the next page or go to the next page and pull the panel back and we'll kind of play around with that. Like he used to send me when we first started the process, he would send me like the super rough pencil super sketch. Like you can barely see what it is. You know what I mean? Like, but I
Yep.
have it, I know because I've written, because I'm giving him the script. So I'm like, oh, that's where this is going, and whatever. And he would send me those, and then he'd be like, is this good? And we'd kind of play with that layout. And then he'd send me the pencils and then the inks. But now I just send him the script and he sends me the inks, and it's like he's living in my brain.
That's
Uh,
awesome.
it's cool. It's pretty wild. Um, every once in a while he'll do something that I didn't plan, but it's better. Like he's just good. But here's something else I think that people need to know if you're going to work with an artist. Number one, your audience is the artist. Your audience isn't your
Mm.
audience. So you need, because if they're the ones that are pulling the trigger on everything,
Yeah.
so you have to communicate that to them effectively. That's the first thing. The second thing is make sure that whoever you're using doesn't just do covers. Um, you really want to make sure that they're spending a ton of time in sequential art.
Yeah.
Um, you know, the cover art's awesome. Um, but I think when you have someone who knows and understands how the panels have to move for pacing,
Yeah.
um, that's super important, because a lot will get lost in translation. Um, like I remember like one page in issue 2 was taking him a while to get done. Not because it's because it's just it was a hard page to put together. And I remember just having exchanges with him like, "Oh, well maybe we can do, you know, this instead." And he's just amazing. Um, so yeah, a lot of it now has come to life because of just the way he's been able to kind of play around with stuff.
Mm.
Um, and also like we have a lot of conversations about like or had now, now that everything's established, we have these conversations less, but um conversations about other artists, right? Like who do you draw like? What would you
Yeah.
like this character to look like? Like even Sam's initial designs, what I remember mentioning like my favorite artist styles, like um Jimenez is like my number one right now. Any and all Jorge Jimenez. I think that's his first name. I'll be
Yeah.
embarrassed if that's yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
uh, all of his stuff on bat. That's like it's not anime, but it's like anime. It's manga adjacent.
Yes.
I
Yep.
love. So it's like one bit that, one bit, J. Scott Campbell. One bit he drew. There's a picture of Sophia's face in issue 2 and she's like turning to yell, and it's very Scalera. It's got
Mm.
like, and I was just like, dude, where did this come? Like, this is, and it's done in such a way that like it's not jarring, right? It's not like it's not appropriate for what else is happening on the panel. But who's also like Scalera is one of my favorites. Dragotta, I love. So that's the other thing too. Like, it helps me tell my story when I have a lot of the art in my head already, like living.
Yeah.
Like I'll talk to people and they're like, I had this idea for a comic and I kind of want it to move this way or that way. And I'll say, like, oh, well, what are you reading right now? And I'm like, what do you mean? Like, well, what are you reading that's being published right now? Like if you're, if your favorite art, and there's nothing wrong with this, but if your favorite art is the art, even McFarlane's art or
Mm.
art from 20, 30, 40 years ago, if you're like that Kirby art is the best, it's like it's great for what it was. It's great. I
Yeah.
still look, it's cool. But you want to make sure that you can, because a lot of these artists are trying to make it now, right? Like you have to respect that too. Like they're trying to break out in this world, in this industry. So you want to make sure you can have conversations with them about who's doing the thing right now in the same way that like the way the music world works, right? Like
Yeah.
if you if someone's like, "Hey, what does your band sound like?" and you're like, "Oh, the Bad Brains." It's like, "All right, well, I'll probably just go listen to the Bad Brains, man." Like you
Right.
know what I mean? Like you kind of have to be really thoughtful in, if I want you to come to my show, I have to be clear about what my band sounds like. And I have to be able to sell you on the justification of the spend. And genre contemporary is the best way to communicate that. Um, so that's kind of like always in the back of my mind. It kind of feels like a bit inauthentic because it sounds like I'm just trying to get a sale. You know what I
Mm.
mean?
Yeah.
But it's only because I respect the consumer too much. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I think other people will be like, "Who cares what people think about that?" But like, I care enough to be like, "Listen, I've spent $26,000 of my own money on this thing.
Yeah.
The story moves in this way. The art is similar to this, and I think you'll like it if you like these three other things." And that's not because I'm hungry for a sale, but I need to sell you on that because in order for you to experience it, you do need to spend $10, right? Like I can't
Yeah.
give it to you for free. So there is this like exchange that has to happen. And I always want to just be clear and transparent about that. So there
Yeah.
you go.
That's great. So I want to, so you mentioned, you mentioned Bad Brains, and that they're such a fun band.
Yeah.
But I want to talk music because I know we initially bumped this back because you were going to a basement show. Um, and so when you said that, I was like, man, that's my people. Like
Yeah.
I one of the most fun shows that I ever went to was in the back of a gas station. And it was like the warehouse part of the gas station. They only use the front half, and the
Now,
back
where are
half
you
you had to
from?
like go through. So I'm in Ohio between
Oh, yeah.
Cincinnati and Dayton. So we uh Cincinnati gets skipped a lot by a lot of the big tours because all the arenas that we have are outdated. They're working on it. But I honestly like there's an emo band from Dayton that I really like. They're called Life and Idol. Just a little plug for them. And they put something out on their threads that just like shook me because I had just spent a bunch of money to go see Blink 182 in Columbus this year.
Okay.
Because they're my favorite band. I can look at their albums and know what my life was based on
Yeah.
the album that came out. And so I spent all this money to go see them, and then I saw Life and Idol put up like, a lot of people are saying they don't have money to come see these smaller shows, but like they turn around and spend 87 times more on these other bands that they've already seen 7 times. And it was just like, ooh, that's the right kind of like direct pressure for me
Yeah.
because I want to support the smaller bands. Like I
Mhm.
want to be a part of that. I know I'm not in my 20s anymore. Uh, I know I went through the phase of like, leaving the house at 10 p.m., which now I'm like, it's 10 p.m. It's past my bedtime.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
But I love finding those small venues and trying to connect with bands in those spaces because you end up having like when I went to that show in the back of a gas station, like I still remember that, and that was 12 years ago. And it
Yeah.
was just like being on there was no stage, there were no lights, they just had the warehouse lights on, band hooked up their instruments and they played, and it was awesome because we were just like this close to them. Like I
Yeah.
reached out at one point and I just like touched the guy's shoulder, like as he was playing. I was like, this is such a cool experience.
Yeah.
And he like looked at me and was like, and then just kept playing. I was like, this is what it should be. And
Hmm.
so that said, like what aspects or are there elements of your creative process that you think about or you can look at and be like, yeah, that's kind of been influenced by my experience with music or
Yeah.
like
So I did the whole singer-songwriter thing in my early 20s. Like we licensed songs to MTV. I would do like the New York, Philly, Jersey circuit.
yep.
Um, and I think the the biggest impact on my creative process has just been um like I haven't had time to do it, but like I follow like every indie label that I love on YouTube, and every
Mhm.
Friday they just release all their content, and I'll just like go from one YouTube page to the next and just like listen, and like every once in a while I'll get hit with something like real heavy, and then I always just think about its impact on my life. Like are you familiar with the band Hot Mulligan?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so Hot Mulligan I was again scrolling through, and they released this live version of a song "Heem's Not Here," and I remember just being like, oh my god, like this is just epic. And then just going back, I have to be careful now because the scripts are already done. So like I don't ever shoehorn anything in when I'm feeling a certain way.
Mm.
But in the initial creative process, like those heavier songs are almost always Like they hit a vein with me emotionally, and then I kind of just like I'll just do just free writing. Like it'll either be something very personal, and it'll be more of like a diary entry.
Yep.
And then sometimes I'll be able to tease what's in the diary entry um into what's later a story. Or I'll just separate myself completely and just try and like play around with this idea of something that the song makes me feel. But it's wild, like between that of like just trying to consume new music that way, and I still go to shows because I just think like the first Unitarian church is the basement show that I went to, and like the church in Philly is iconic. It's like it's so iconic that Vans made shoes with the tops of the shoe that look like the stage is like a old like alphabet carpet, and Vans made
Okay.
shoes with the alphabet carpet on them
That's
because
cool.
it's yeah, like it's just been you just go and there's just this like raw energy. Like I still dance, I still two-step, I still do it. Like I'm in it.
Yeah.
And like my wife comes with me and we have this understanding where she's like, see you later. And I just disappear, and
Yep.
there's this like togetherness. Actually, the basement show on the church show on Tuesday, I brought stickers. Like I was literally walking around the venue in between songs and was like, I'm publishing a comic book, have a sticker. I'm publishing a comic book, have a sticker. Like
That's
handing
awesome.
crazy enough. 2 days later, some kid comes into the comic book store and was like, and we sell my copies of the book in the store. And he's like, was that guy at a show in Philly on Tuesday? And I was working and I was like, I was like, sure was. That was me, and like that is what's so important. It's why there is a fictional hardcore band in the book that you're only going to meet in like there we see a poster, and Sam
Yep.
in issue 2 has the Eater t-shirt.
Yep.
I kind of take a little jab at hardcore straight edge culture too, because like I don't know how a straight edge vampire band, I don't know what that looks like or what that even means. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? But that was just kind of like my tongue in cheek moment. But I believe in, before I believe in art, I believe in culture. I believe in culture more than anything else, because the culture is what we get the art from, right? And like that was just something I wanted to pay homage to. Like I wanted to pay homage to the culture of the scene in very subtle ways, like here and there in the book. And you learn that Sam in some ways maybe came from that culture in one way, shape, or form, and somehow Tom is also, because you kind of meet, and that was literally based off of like I did a backpack trip through Iceland, and I was hanging out with a couple of guys from Wales, and like they knew all the bands I knew, and you're just like, oh man, like,
It's
and then
crazy.
and then like later, like one of their favorite bands was a South Jersey emo band called emo pop punk band called the Early November, and
Yeah.
yeah, dude,
Love
they
those
live,
guys.
they're like 40 minutes from me, and like when I went to go visit my buddy in Wales a couple months later, like I got him a Early November t-shirt because I had gone to a show, and it's like that sort of stuff that
Yeah.
really impacts my writing, because I do you see, because I didn't want to overly make it like punk rock, like too much. Like this, the pizza thing, I wanted to make sure that was there, because I
Mhm.
felt like the aesthetic was there, but I didn't want to make it like, um, I didn't want to make it a punk rock band story, because I had toyed with that idea. Like I had toyed with the idea of like Sam being, up in a band, or they're kind of being that thing, but like I feel like the culture is more than that.
Mm.
Um, in the same way that like, man, have you ever seen SLC Punk?
Yeah.
One of my
Love
favorite
that
movies of
movie.
all time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And those guys aren't in punk bands. Like they're just in the culture.
Mhm.
Um, that may have been one of the first times I cried from a movie, by the way.
Oh,
That ending,
man. That movie
brutal,
wrecks me.
brutal.
Yeah.
Um, but like, there's like that movies like Empire Records.
Mhm.
um, that are very like they're very punk, but not at all. Because
Yeah.
it's more like we were saying before, like it's not just punk with a capital P and like Liberty Spikes, and even though I had them and all that stuff,
Yep.
it's more about like the relationships. There's something about punk, like being like it's like this DIY counterculture, just living for other people in a way that's just different, and I wanted to make that apparent in the book as best as I could.
Yeah.
So that's how the music trickles in, and I wanted to make it like there's I can't, I don't know, I don't, hopefully I don't get like in trouble, but there's like it may be construed as being a Sublime poster in
Mm.
in Sam's bedroom,
With
like
with the knives in it?
yeah, like those sorts of things, like that band. Like, so here's another like punk thing that I wanted to make real in the book, but never happens. But I want that energy there. Like when I was in high school, my buddy worked at a liquor store, and I would just like go hang out at the liquor store, and like just we would hang out in the freezer, like, or in the fridge in the back, and we'd be like breaking down boxes and like listening to music and listening to like 40 ounces of freedom. And like every once in a while, I like bring my guitar. You know what I mean? Like it's
Yeah,
like that need I wanted to be in the story in a couple of different ways. And I think Irish Tom will help also kind of move that needle a bit. So yeah, that's where the music is anyway.
that's cool. Yeah, I noticed the eater poster and the shirts, and I was like, I wonder if this is based on like a real band or if this is just a nod to the scene. So I love that I nailed that. Just a little
Yeah,
self high five for me.
yeah. Yep.
Um, that's great. So the last thing that I wanted to touch on is my dog loses his mind. If you can hear him, I apologize.
It's fine.
There's a ruffian group of kids on here riding their bikes, and I can't be mad because that was me when I was their age.
Yeah.
There's like 700. There's so many kids outside my house right now. I'm easily distracted also. So you're so after you reached out on, I think it was Instagram first. Automatically I was like, this dude's actually like reaching out, wants to talk. Let's see what he does on social media. And I noticed you will post these like super fun, just short little videos. Either like just saying, hey, there was one where you were singing Fallout Boy,
Yeah.
and then you sang the song, and then you were like, it's just Kickstarter's coming soon, so whatever. And it was just
Yeah.
like, it felt so authentic to me of just like you're promoting your book, but you're not just like, hey, I have a book, hey, I have a book, hey, I have a book, hey, I have a book. It was like, I'm gonna do this. I'm having fun, and like, oh, there's this other thing that I have fun with. I write comics, and it's on Kickstarter. You can do the thing. And so I just want to talk, just like, what's your take on social media? Is it like influenced by someone, or was it just one of those like, I just don't see people doing this, and I,
Um. All right. So it. I was very much so. Like I had especially as a teacher. Like I had
Mhm.
my account wasn't public, and I as I was before I even started the comic, like I was doing like if you scroll like all the way down in my Instagram, you'll see like a ton of like music journalism. Like I was doing like the records that impacted me the most, and I do these like
Mm,
little either like short stories or like these little write-ups. Because I wanted to start playing around with like using social media as a tool to just express myself. And it was born out of my manager, who I still talk to all the time, my former manager when I was doing the singer-songwriter stuff. We always had these conversations. He's like, dude, you need to put this stuff on social media. Like, why aren't you talking about that? Why aren't you doing these things? Like, you'd be good at it. And I was like, nah, I don't know. Like, I don't want to be bothered. Like, I don't, because it is a lot of work. Like, it's a
yeah.
ton of work to get the content together. But I couldn't be bothered. And then I was wrapping up my grad school program for the reading specialist thing this summer, and I was was the only guy in the program. There were only 12 of us for this summer thing. And I was with these people every single day from 8 a.m. to noon. And so you get to start to know each other. And um, one girl turned and looked at me and she was like, you need to be on social media. Like, why don't you put any, like, just the way that you act, the way, the things that you say, like you're just, why don't you do that? And I was just always worried and nervous. And eventually I realized that when I put out the comic, I was like, I, again, I have to justify the 10, like people, I'm competing with things. I'm competing with naked women on not safe for work covers. I'm competing with all this other stuff. Um, I need people to understand where I'm coming from. I need
Yeah.
people to understand who I am. I need people to understand my story because I think my story is directly related to Sam's story. I keep telling people this, like Sam is me. She's my friends. This is a love letter to a large number of people. Like this is an important story for me. It's not just some thing I want to do.
Yeah.
But I can't communicate that in the book. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
you can't do that. So social media gives me an opportunity to allow people to get to know me. Kind of in a can't as candid as social media can be, right? Like, because it is, you know what I mean? Like for a 30-second clip, it might take me an hour to like cut and edit and put together, but it's still an expression of me. Like that is authentic. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um, so I went from someone who wanted nothing to do with social media to being someone who kind of understands its function as a tool in this world that no one can figure out.
Yeah.
Like I was looking at my competition, I was looking at other writers specifically, and I spent a ton of time looking at what all these other writers are doing on social media. And the answer is really nothing aside from like just reposting some things and whatever. But there wasn't a ton of personality stuff. So I started taking a look at other social media accounts that I was following that I just liked. Um, like Alex Hermosi is like a social media guru dude. But I think he started his old thing like selling gym memberships. He's like a coach kind of guy, but I
Mm.
like the style of his stuff. Um, so that was, and my one buddy who runs a production company put me onto him, and just like, because again, he was like, do you kind of act like this guy? Like there's something about the way that you might want to, and again, I'm not comparing myself to him at all, but
Mm.
I started looking at what he was doing, and then I just started looking at like the best of the best. Like a lot of stand-up comedians are doing a great job right now
Yeah.
of putting together great content. So, and I was a big stand-up comedian guy anyway, so now it's just fun for me.
Yeah.
Um, but those places, let's see, Diesel Dan, who's like I'm so pumped that Dan just reposted my Kickstarter.
Yeah.
Uh, he makes great content. Sammy DeMonster makes great comic book content. So I'm also kind of just like, I'm just taking notes, man. Like I'm just sitting back and being like, what do I like? What do I vibe with? What energy do I really appreciate? Oh, do you know, oh my goodness, what's his name? He runs the Punk Rock MBA.
Um,
Oh my,
uh,
Finn McKenzie.
yeah.
Finn McKenzie of Punk
Yes.
Rock MBA is also my dude. He's probably before Hermosi. Finn McKenzie of Punk Rock MBA is probably my number one guy of who I just love. I could watch him talk about pretty much anything.
Yeah.
Um, and again, it's like it's seen stuff, and I think it's again, it sounds corny, but it's culture first, right? Like
Mhm.
it's always culture first, and then trying to to tell your story. It's like a weird formula. Maybe I'll be able to sell it for $1 million, but it's like this weird, like culture, art, market, right? Like
Yeah.
how can I make all that really work in a way that doesn't bankrupt me? Um, you know, but also really tells my story. It's funny. Like man, when I thought I wouldn't, like after I got the first rejection letter, the only rejection about the package, I remember just being like, I can't not, I can't let this go. Like
Yeah.
it was crazy for me. Like I felt like I was trying to keep my friends alive,
Mm,
which is how I know it was the right decision, right? Like it wasn't even a question where now Sam, Joey, Sophia, Irish Tom, and you will meet a gentleman by the name of Dre in issue 3. Like they're my friends. Like I love them. They are people who are dear to me because they are people who are dear to me, right? Like these
yeah.
impactful people in my life who might not even be here anymore, but they were just lightning rods. I owe it to them. So this has really become this bigger thing for me.
That's cool. I love
Thanks,
that.
man.
I'm sitting here getting like goosebumps because just having having a creator be that uh passionate and that connected to the stories is just like that's one of those it almost doesn't even for me matter then. Like you don't have to sell me any more than just like these are people that I'm invested in and I
Yeah,
have to tell their story. Like I have to get this out. It has to be a thing. You're
yeah,
like, all right, no, you're right. It has to be a thing. Like what how do I pay to support the thing? So
yeah.
um like that's where I end up landing and I'm a physical person so I had to back the books at the physical tier so that I can get them in my hand because I want to be able to hold them and
Right on.
make it real. So I okay, so that's those are the questions that I had there. So people can obviously go, I'm gonna do the YouTube thing. They can go to the description and I will have your Kickstarter linked. I will also have the Harpoon Creative Industries website link in the description as well. Where should I link? Where should they find you on social media? Should it be Instagram so that they can also watch your videos with
Yeah,
me?
yeah, Instagram's pretty much my primary platform. So just at carmen.costa.writes. And then I've really fallen in love with threads. Like
Same.
I like it. People were haters initially, and someone had said something, I forget who posted it, but they were like, um, they didn't understand why there were so many negative people not coming to the platform. And I said something along the lines of like, good. Like all the negative people, like threads is becoming awesome
Hmm.
because it's only people who like want to try something new, who want to be a part of conversations. Like it's not the dumpster fire of X or Twitter yet.
Yeah.
Um, it and it moves seamlessly into your Instagram. It really is for me. Like I think it's how I met you. Like
Yeah.
it's a great place for people to for creators and people to just connect and not have to get bogged down because all the negative people are gone. Like they don't have the energy to be negative somewhere else. You know what I mean?
Right. Right.
So it's been good. But yeah, my primary thing is Instagram. But feel free, like I'm trying to be more active on Threads. So if anybody messages me or tags me on Threads, I'll probably be pretty quick.
Cool.
Yeah, yeah,
Love
man.
that. Any closing thoughts? Any like just burning fire of emotion of like I need people to hear
Um,
this.
no, just that I just hope that you guys love Sam and her friends as much as I do because they're um I don't know, they're real for me. Like they're real. Like and I'm not. Anytime I do this, like it sounds like I'm bashing the marketplace, and I'm not. It's just that um, I don't know. I feel like I grew up in a time where, like, the scene that we grew up in, like these are like the scene from 1995 to 2005 was willed into existence by a
Mhm.
bunch of people who had something to say and didn't see it being said anywhere.
Yep.
And I feel like in the contemporary marketplace, everyone's trying to sell the thing that might be the next movie or create they wanted there's nothing. I'm not going to say there's nothing heavy because there's plenty of heavy stuff, but I don't know. I just don't know if the story that I want to tell about the community that I grew up in, about the people that I love is there. Or if it is there, it's so inauthentic, right? Like if there's a punk rock, metal, hardcore thing, it's a money grab. It's Hot Topic, right? Like it's
Yep.
like, there's this clip just went viral with I think within the last like 2 weeks of the Most Def gets asked about Drake
Mm.
in an interview, and uh the interviewer, she says, "Is Drake hip hop?" And Most Def is like, "Oh, why are you doing this to me? Like, why?" Are you, and then he says like something along the lines of like Drake is like he equates Drake to like shopping. Like
Mm.
it's surface level consumer pop. And that's fine because I love that too. Like I like potato chips, man. Like I don't need a 4-course 5-star meal. Like I can eat a Hershey bar and be good.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I get it. I love a good X-Men story. You know what I mean? Hickman's Gods is like my favorite thing right now. If anybody wants a Marvel story that is new and fresh, got like these stories are there, but it's not my story. And I
Mm.
wanted to, and I don't think it's the story of people that I love. And I just wanted, they've given me so much, that I feel like the comic book world needs to experience them too. So hopefully anybody who reads the book finds a home there. That's real. I hope anybody who reads the book finds a home there. Like there's a reason why I write those notes. Like that's my attempt at like these notes in the beginning of the book
Yeah.
are like, guys, it's more important to me than anything else. Like actually, like I love the comic, it's all good, but like what I'm saying in these notes, it's not just like a thank you space. Like it really is. I'm attempting to sort of communicate my why. And I'm doing it for every single thing. The short story, which I have to send you, by the way. I did not send this to you, and I need to make
Mm.
sure you get it. The short story has it like on the back page,
Okay.
and it's just like I want people to feel like they belong somewhere.
Yeah.
And I feel like for a very long time, a large number of people have felt like that they don't belong places. And you now have a home, and your home is Proctor if you would like it. So
That's great. Dude,
there
I
you go.
love that so much. I love that so much.
Thank you, man. Thank you.
I
Thank you.
I I will probably be able to say this with confidence that this will not be the only time that we talk, because there are so many things that you have said that just resonate, and it's like, yeah, we are very kindred. We have similar stories, similar history,
Yeah.
and I think we're in similar places now where it's like that doesn't exist, and I want it to, because I want to be able to find the other people that want
Yeah.
that too, and like I have the know-how and the ability to make that a thing, to give them a space to feel comfortable. So I'm just going to do it.
Yeah.
And
Right on.
that's where this show came from. And it was the same thing when I first put that up on Threads. Like, this is kind of 15 years in the making. From like, so my degree is in broadcasting, like whatever. I haven't used it for a real job in many, many years. Um, but it gave me the knowledge to then be able to turn it into a really cool hobby that I have transitioned from, like doing radio stuff and internet things and like a lot of social media stuff, then into a Spotify show, and then now into this. And this already just kind of feels like this is what it's been leading to. And
Yeah.
so like reading Proctor, it was like, man, this is what like a demon hunter could be like. Like this is what the story that you've written, and I don't say this lightly, is one of the favorite things that I've read. Just like the artwork, the presentation, the notes that
Thanks,
you
man.
have up top it all feels so personable and so familiar. Like I don't know what other word to give it, but it just feels so familiar, and I love that about it. So I definitely hope that anybody watching will get in line. The project is funded. Congratulations on that, by the way.
Thank you. Thank you.
So now we are on to see what sort of crazy stretch goals you might have in the canon waiting. And until all of that stuff, and then once I get my hands on it, I'm sure I will make some sort of video as well, just like it's here, like I can finally, we can talk details, because now
Yeah.
you have it too.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I love that we have connected again on Threads. Like it's a lot of the traction that I've gotten with people saying, "Hey, I want to talk about music and comics and like punk rock." I don't think that's accidental, that
Right.
it is all happening with other people that are like, "Yeah, that, like, I want to talk about that." Like, yes, yes. So I look forward to just chatting and connecting more with you on Threads and on Instagram, and I might at some point throw up a video of trying to be authentic like my buddy Carmen.
Do it,
And
dude.
I,
Do it.
I think it'll be cool. So I think that's going to be it. I appreciate you taking the time out of your as of the day of this recording on Monday to just sit down and talk. I We talked about way more than I ever anticipated. So thank you for sharing that with me,
Yeah, man.
because you've definitely given me a lot to think about. So I will see you online and on the internet. And for all of the punks that are watching, I hope that you get out there and that you watch some shows or listen to some music specifically, but read some comics. Okay, just go read some comics. That's going to do it for this episode of Long Box Punk. I have been Chris. He has been Cameron. He has been Cameron. There it is.
Carmen.
And we are Carmen.
It's fine.
Man, I was so close to the end.
It's perfect.
Carmen.
It's fine. It's fine.
He's Carmen, y'all. Go find him on Kickstarter.
Later, guys.